Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Baldrige Foundation's Institute for Performance Excellence webinar, Optimizing Your Journey to Excellence, Integrating Business Architecture, AI, and Process Management. Before we get started today, I want to take a moment and recognize the members of the Mac Baldrige Society and our newest member, One Mesa, the first three-time National Award recipient. Mac Baldrige Society members also serve as trustees as the Foundation's Institute for Performance Excellence, and it is their generous support that makes presentations like today's possible. Here's today's agenda. We have with us today Lourdes Gonzalez, Principal Advisor, Lulu Process Design Group. Following her presentation, we will have questions from the audience and then a few closing remarks. So now I'm going to turn it over to you, Lourdes, to get us started.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Al, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor for me to be presenting and sharing my knowledge and passion about processes with the audience. Likewise, like the Baldrige journey, I would like to, I kind of divided the presentation, our journey today, in 4 buckets of knowledge. The first one we're going to be talking about is the intersection and how to harmonize really our beloved Baldrige Excellence Framework with business architecture, which include process architecture as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of my thoughts about how to integrate those nicely. The second part of our presentation will dive in a little bit more on processes itself, and we're going to be talking about how to actually, at the high level, because we have only 40 minutes, at the high level, we're going to be, I'm going to demonstrate to you, I'm going to share with you how to develop a process architecture or a house of processes, whatever way your organization name it. Third, we're going to be diving even deeper in terms of processes, and we're going to be talking about how to actively manage those processes. And my favorite topic of the presentation is really how to augment the capabilities of our workforce. So I'm going to give you a little bit tips in change management and how to actually do that. So let's dive into the first section of the presentation will be the harmonization of the Baldrige framework and business architecture. As you know, we have our Baldrige Excellence Framework. Everybody, most of you in the audience might be already know about our framework. As you know, we have the left side quadrant, leadership quadrant, and results quadrant to the right. As you also know, the assessment of the organization this year are going to be concentrated in results. So we have 7 categories. So I'm just going to show you this to refresh your memory and show you how the use of methodologies as the business architecture, which is another framework that I use to work with clients and organizations in processes. As you can see, there's in this framework, we have 16 concepts on that, and this is the one that I really have used many years. Was developed by Process Renewal Group, looking at the process framework, the Baldrige framework, and looking at the concepts. As you know, the Baldrige framework is not prescriptive, but we do have different methodologies on how to actually do every single of the elements. If you take a look at the left side, the quadrant, the leadership, you can see concepts at business ecosystem, which I show you in a minute. Strategic objective, business models, and so on. Of course, leadership and strategy and customers in that. But in between that, there's a lot of questions in our criteria asking the how. I will propose to you, I will share with you that the methodologies that we use in business architecture are very proven in terms of how to actually do that. So let's dive in a little bit into processes in this case. The reason why I'm showing you this, as I mentioned, as a Baldrige examiners are very intimate with the criteria. The criteria is not prescriptive. And you most likely you have methodologies on how to do each of the how in your organizations. I'm proposing you to look at the business architecture as one of the methodologies. If I look at, as I mentioned, categories 1 to 3, you can find them in the tools and methods, the approaches that we systematically use to develop those. Category 4 to 6, you can see a lot of the work that we do in here. So it's an and for me, it's not or, because on this type of methodology, including the process itself, help us dive into the how. Just to close up this section in terms of process architecture and Baldrige and the harmonization of both. Of course, there's a lot of depth into each of them. These slides want to show you the different. It's a process, right? So we receive some inputs and we deliver some. Is everything connected? So in some approaches, some knowledge, and some using the techniques, we're going to develop some of these. If you think about the process, the organization profile, we're going to develop some of that content and enter that into a process to then link to other things that we need to design to actively manage the entire business itself. So if we move on, I'm sorry for just like a very brief section on that. It just, of course, each of those 16 concepts has systematic tools to actually do each of them. But I'm going to concentrate today the presentation in terms of process, the process architecture, we can call it the house of processes. In the criteria, we call them core processes, support processes, and so on. So we're going to be, I'm going to show you simple ways to, simple but systematic ways to develop a process architecture. Before we develop a process architecture, I will step back, and of course, it's Olympic time, right? So an architecture in this case will be the Eiffel Tower, which is beautiful. Good things are happening in France this week. So before we develop the business process architecture, I want to focus your attention into 4 key elements at the high level. Think about a very 50,000-foot view. I always recommend to start with the stakeholder. Understand what their stakeholders' needs are. Understand what we exchange from them, what we provide to them, and what we need from them in order to develop our processes. Keep in mind that the end goal of having processes in an organization is to deliver value to the customer. So starting from whatever you are, the right side, the customers, understanding what are the services, what is the value that we deliver to the process, and keep that at the core of how you design a process architecture. And of course, all the processes are connected because we don't work in silos. So the system of processes are the one that deliver value to the customers. Last but not least, use the best practices in terms of design processes. And of course, this is just a snippet of that. There's much more into it in terms of modeling and documenting processes. So let's talk about a little bit about how we go about developing a process architecture and how we define what are the improvements that we're going to move forward to invest our resources into. I just kind of give you a quick overview how I develop this with my organizations and clients. First of all, think about our process organization profile. So who we are, explore that because that will inform what are the processes that you need in terms of developing, executing the strategy that we defined. What do we have an inventory of the processes? And I'll show you a couple of ways to do that. And then just a brief concept on how to set the priorities in terms of the improvement roadmap. So let's talk a little bit about who we are. In this case, I took an example of one organization that won the award. But before, I want to level set everybody in terms of process. What the process mean? I don't know, that is pretty basic, but Most of the definitions are, well, I'll say that input, it's a set of activities and you deliver an output. Our Baldrige criteria, so long as in the concept of business process management, we look at as a holistic definition of the processes. Yes, there are activities. Yes, we have an input. Yes, we have to deliver something, but we consume resources. And the whole purpose of a process is to deliver value to a client. So I'm working based on that definition, which is pretty well aligned with our Baldrige definition. Let me just step back a little bit here with our Baldrige definition. A couple of years ago, as a good examiner, I went to the criteria and look at all the elements of business excellence, which are comprised in the 7 categories that we have. What do we need to have in place to go through the journey of business excellence? And I just pick out different concepts through the criteria. And those are actually what are the processes that we need in terms of execute the strategy of the organization. There are about 50 processes included in the criteria. And I mentioned this because I took that if you think about the criteria as a roadmap for business excellence, then they're just basically suggesting some of the elements I have to have in your organization to become to achieve excellence in your business. And then I group them looking at the hat of business process management. I group them at core processes, which we call it the same way. Guiding processes are just the management processes, and support process. And these are really how I depict a business process architecture. So let's kind of go through quickly on how you can develop one. This example, as you might recognize, it started School of San Diego. It's one of the Baldrige Award winners. So I'm looking at public information in terms of what they have and what is the mission, vision, the key offerings, and so on. The reason I'm sharing this is because whatever process architecture you develop, it is the whole purpose of the process is delivering value to a client, to a customer. If that's the case, which is true, that's the only way that we deliver value to our customers, then we have to understand what we're promising to that customer, what we're promising, what our organization is going to deliver. And I pick words and pick just snippets of information from the mission, from the vision, from the strategies, from everything that tells me the story about what we're promising to the customers. And I do that because we need to understand how is it that we're going to deliver that. And how is it means it's a process. I need a process to do in order to do that. So the next step that I'm going to show you is in terms of what else we can do. This is a simple tool that I show you in addition to really understand, starting from the top to the bottom, understand what is the mission, vision of the organization, and so on. So this is in business architecture. We call this an IGO. It is kind of similar to other tools that we have, but in this case, we can put a process in the middle. It is exploring what is the ecosystem that we have. What is it that we need to deliver? And in this case, we call them IGO. We have inputs, outputs, guides, and enablers. And by understanding, and of course, you do this in a setting of a team. By do this, you're going to start understanding what I need from my stakeholders and what I need to deliver. And those are key clues to tell me what are the processes that I need in order to execute the strategy of the organization. So simple tool, very, very well received and practical. So you saw the Baldrige 50 processes. This is how extracting information and exploring from what the organization needs to deliver. This is how I organize a business, a process architecture. This is This is a level 0, so the highest level. So in this case, I'm showing you an example of a customer that have a swimming academy. We have 3 main core processes in the middle. Then we have the management processes at the top and the enabler or support processes at the bottom. The reason I'm showing you this one in particular is, and I call in this version 0, is because as a process practitioner, I have started using a couple of years ago the artificial intelligence tools that we have available. In this particular case, I didn't know much about the swimming academy industry, the swimming industry. So I did use AI tools to help me understand what is a business in an organization that is established, as many of your organizations are. I will advise you to explore those tools, explore artificial intelligence tools to just really exchange ideas, brainstorm. Nothing will substitute just working in teams and actually making it real. So that's what I just call it version 0 in this case. And I'm going to use that example as just to guide you through some of the concepts that I've been researching and testing and doing and extracting best practices and being able to share that with you. This is just one of the, as I was mentioning, I use artificial intelligence to actually help us just create, identify processes that we might need for our business. This chart doesn't show, but we'll send you the slides. These are just three ways that I use artificial intelligence, and I will, in the later part of the presentation, I will give you more tips about how to help your workforce work with that. Understand the business, as I mentioned, that was very helpful. Exploring different processes that I need. And the last one that is not showing here is really documenting processes. There are different models. There are different products out there. ChatGPT is one of them, Copilot, Gemini. There are many other ones available. In terms of the information that the models right now have, I can tell you that for process documentation, it's a very good tool to use nowadays. So let's go back to just recap a little bit. We identified what the organization needs in terms of processes, because we do understand who we are. We do understand our process of our organizational profile. Out of that, I'm going to identify what are the processes that we will need in order to execute that strategy. We just did that by, in a couple seconds, showing you the process architecture. But then once we have that, where we put priorities, where we start improving the processes, do we take them, all 50 of them? Or do we identify some of the key processes that actually I'm going to invest my resources in active managing those? I'm just sharing with you this very simple tool. And of course, there's much more in depth on each of these. By simple looking at your process architecture, you can identify, number one, do we have that process? Do we know that that is working? And just try to, as a team, identify high level without really going into spending time doing the whole analysis of maturity of the processes. But you can identify if you have it, if it's in place, how good it is. And then more important for me is how important that process is for us. And go through each of the boxes of your process architecture doing that exercise. You're going to end up with something similar to this, in which in this particular case, and this is still the example of the swimming academy. So let's think about this one itself. Is they develop class curriculum, but they probably have to revamp the whole way approach to do that, and it's highly important for them. So as we develop the improvement roadmap for that organization, these ones are going to be at the top of that. And of course, you're going to be looking at what type of resources I do have to actually do process improvements. So you have the big picture, but start small and continue improving to create that culture of process improvement. Sorry, the slides took a little bit of, we'll go back there. So sorry, it's like gonna stuck a little bit. So now we talk about a little bit about how to harmonize the Baldrige framework with methodologies like business architecture, which inside it has how we develop process architecture. We talk a little bit about how to develop a process architecture and how to use actually the tools that we have available in artificial intelligence right now to help your process practitioners actually do that. Let's talk a little bit deeper in terms of processes and how we go about really actively managing those, starting with defining what I mean by that. And I'm going to show you just different tools that we have to actively managing the processes. So let's dive in a little bit more in terms of process and how to do that. Before I go into the tools, I want to share with you that, of course, in Baldrige, when we assess organizations, we're looking at, we're talking about processes. This is our sort of old way to evaluate the organizations. As you know, this year, there have been changes. So the examiners are looking at results first. And if your organization is selected for a site visit, then the examiners will go and really assess the processes that are producing those results. So in this case, of course, this year, we changed the program changed the way to evaluate, assess the organizations at the first level with the rubric. So thinking at those high levels, we always look at how we systematically conduct the processes, how we systematically execute the processes, how we deploy the processes. We want them integrated. So those are kind of the highest levels of maturity. How we do that, how we go from we need to have this process to actively managing this process. I would like to share with you some of the techniques, some of the approaches that I use, because at the end of the day, the purpose of process is really performance. We do want to strive for process excellence so we can achieve business excellence. So I'm going to go through just a couple of tools, different tools that we have, and I group them in four groups. Foundational concepts, how we set up targets, how to assess not only a process, but a system of processes, and how to keep the machine moving, continuously improving. So let's talk about, since this is business process management, by the way, in this case, my colleague, Roger Tregear, we call it process-based management. By that, we understand that is for having continuous management of that process architecture that I was talking about, by which we create value by creating, accumulating, and delivering the value to the customers, and of course, doing it in a continuous way. So what are some of the techniques that we can systematically use to actively manage the processes? As I mentioned, I just kind of divide those in four groups for you. First of all, it's really understanding the foundational concepts, what I call it. Understanding why we need to do process improvement, understanding why that process needs to exist. If you link that back to our vision, mission, and organizational strategic objective, we are seeking for if we are investing some resources in designing a process and improving a process, it has to have a purpose. So that's the first thing that I will tell you. Second bit, as you know, organizations typically are organized as functional organizations. That's what I call the vertical. However, value delivery happens across the organization. So we're talking about cross-functional processes in this case. By having a continuous engine for improvement. In our case, we kind of divide it into two, and that's why I like to identify what are the priorities for improvement, because we don't have infinite resources. We have this circle of process owner, what I call process owner, and the circle of process improvement. The process owner, and I'll talk a little bit about more in a minute about that. The process owner is the one that, or process steward, whatever name you use in your organization, is the one that is responsible to set up the target of the process, assess the performance of the process. If we have any gap or any opportunity for improvement, then we activate the process improvement circle. In process management, business process management, we have 7 enablers. Some of them, we talk about that. It's just process architecture and so on. And of course, each of them has a lot more information about. I'd be happy to help you if you need more knowledge about that, which is very extensive. One of the best things that I like when I work with clients and I work with Baldrige organization is, if we have an organization that is already committed, that already have started in terms of the Baldrige journey, that typically comes from the tops down. So the commitment to improve their processes is there. But that doesn't mean that no organizations that they're not starting in the Baldrige journey cannot do it. Sometimes it starts from the very top, committing to actively managing processes, or from the bottoms up. But we need that in order to continue improving the processes. The second section group of tools that I would like to share with you, and as I mentioned, each of these diagrams do have a systematic way to do it. So I'll be happy to help anybody that needs more information about that. The second set of tools that I would like to mention to you is, of course, we talk a little bit about the process architecture. We identify some of the, through the prioritization, identify some of the processes that we want or we need to improve. And then we start the process improvement. So in this case, I just want to share with you that, of course, we have a system of processes. And typically, what we need to do in terms of process improvement is in actively managing a processes, it's really, we cannot actively manage thousands of processes. In our organization, we're going to have maybe thousands of processes that you don't even know that exist. You may have hundreds of processes that you know the name, somebody, and the information might be in your people's, in your workforce minds and knowledge, but it's not documented. And then we have a narrowed down a number of processes that may be for regulatory purposes, or maybe for any other reason. Maybe you need to do process improvement, and you have those processes documented. Once you do that, then you're ready to actively select a few processes, what I call HIPs, high impact processes, to actually manage those. Then we're just gonna, once we select those processes that we're gonna actively manage, we have to just go a little bit deeper in terms of what they should do. What is the situation? What is the current state of those processes? What do we know? What we want that process to be? And the beautiful thing about just continuous and systematic doing this is, at some point you're going to be able to predict what the process should be. So let's talk about the other ones, the other elements on assess and respond. So I have time to cover the other sections. In assessments, I will share with you, and I'll just probably advance this a little bit. I will share with you that active process management in a nutshell is really, as I mentioned, we use strategies, we use what we are promised, vision, mission, and offerings to the customers to identify what are the processes that we need to create that business architecture. Then the work starts. Once we do that, for each of the processes, for each of the high impact processes that we selected, we're going to then to define what are the objectives, what are the KPIs, and by the way, process KPIs are different than business KPIs, and what are the targets that we need. Once we do that, then the process owner or process steward then start managing that, identifying if the process is not performing, what are the gaps, and can we fix the gaps? So that's the first element on assessing the performance. Second element, just excuse me for a minute. Second element, we'll talk about this already. The process steward or the process owner or whatever name the organization is more familiar with, to actively manage the process, we need to set up a governance for the process, and can be, depending on the size of your organization, can be as small as having the process steward or as big as setting up a governance model itself. Last but not least, you're going to be to actively assess the process continually. You're gonna dive in terms of the documentation that you need and manage the body of knowledge of the process. If you look at the entire system of processes, process architecture, you can manage the maturity of that process architecture as it. The last element on systematic approach in terms of active process management is, once that you know the processes they're going to be actively managing, you have the foundation, you have assessed the process, you know what to improve, then you have to respond. You have to actively plan and organize what process improvements are you going to do. In this case, I'm showing this methodology because one of the things is that I love about this is, are we ready? Is that process, have I done this? Or if it's a new process, then you can start from what is going to be the to be. But I will not go into investing more resources unless I have done the foundational things on a process itself. So let's close this section on this section with capabilities for your organization. We talk a little bit about when we were talking about process architecture, and of course I mentioned that I have been playing or just working quite a bit in the artificial intelligence with the artificial intelligence tools. So how do you leverage those tools? Because they're here to stay, right? So the first thing that comes to my mind, and I just very keen in just thinking about the people side of the changes. So let me share with you some of the concepts, some of the best practices that I have in terms of how to prepare the teams for not only for an AI-enabled future, but for any process transformation that you may want to do in your organization, you're doing in your organization. The first tip that I have for you is really do it in yourself or do it in your team. Define exactly what is the change, and this is most of these as like change management 101, but a little bit with a little bit depth. Just do the change management work on yourself. And I will share with you how I did it in terms of artificial intelligence. I always tell the organizations that you can plan, you may have big plans in terms of technology, but only until you don't demonstrate the value. And that is one of my best tips in terms of using methodologies like business architecture or business process management, which is, they're just one into another one. You need to demonstrate the value of those. So there's no difference in terms of if we're talking here about artificial intelligence, start small, just develop a large, a bigger concept about what your organization wants to go in the long term, but start implementing small projects on that. In specific, talking about artificial intelligence, really embrace the human side, make it human-centered design, bring your people. In this case, artificial intelligence is one of the, if one of the technologies that have more resistance at this point. Forget about, for a minute, about the governance concerns, but it's really at the heart of the people. It is, am I going to have a job next week? So all those fears we need to go through and work with our team to get them ready to embrace the technology, because it's really, in reality, it's here to stay. Whatever you do, communicate often. If you do, like last week, I was in a board meeting, hospital board meeting, is communicate. Don't try to just do projects and let them at the executive suite. Really communicate with the teams and embrace the team. There are change management techniques on how to do that. The one that I use the most is really ADKAR, understanding, meet the people where the people are, and understanding what they need in terms of moving forward with the technology or maybe a big process change. And just really the old good school advice, embrace the first adopters and use them to help you expand deploy the technologies. So I'm going to share with you, changing hats. I'm going to share with you how, as a process practitioners, because I did have the same fears that many people, I was thinking about how I'm going to continue doing my job. My job is going to go away? So I did the change management aspect and work on myself. You can do this in any role in your organization. This is just an example of for this role in particular, from the role of business process practitioner. Looking at what I do in a day in and day out, and you can, as I said, you can apply that to your any role in your organization. Think about activities that no matter what, no matter how the models will improve, you're going to be continually doing that because it has a human touch. If robot cannot be, model cannot be, and facilitate a team, things like that. So think about what you do, what are the methodologies that you use, and kind of divide it, identify those that it will continue on you. Then the other two that I have, the two categories that I have, is that what are the activities that I do in the design, in the process work that I do, that actually I can augment or I can collaborate with the models out there, with the products, with the artificial products out there. And I was able to identify quite a bit of them, and I do these. And the last bucket of activities is, what are the ones that the technology has already proven that might do a much better job than humans. So those are the activities that maybe as a team, as you work with your organizations, can identify what are the potential areas in which we can automate. And of course, before automation, you have to define a process. So as I mentioned, continue in my journey of business process practitioner and artificial intelligence. In this case, I can identify, and again, this is an example that can be applied to many roles. I identify what are the buckets of activities that I do in process design, and then I start exploring different apps, AI-enabled apps out there, and tested them and rate them. So I know, and this is just maybe old because this is like a month old. But I know that I'm going to be continue changing or adding as I continue working with the tools. But it's an easy way to understand. First, I started with I had the fear of what's going to happen with my job. then I dive it into, okay, so let me understand what's going on. Let me understand, do the change management job on myself. And then going forward, identified how we can collaborate. And this is one of the ways, in this case, in this example, but it's totally transferable. So in general, and in this section of the AI, I have a few tips, and this is from the perspective again of the business practitioner, business architect, or business practitioner. So the first tip that I have for you is really be the human in the loop. Remember that I identified areas in which I will continue doing, areas in which I can collaborate with the technology, and areas that I might just identify that the technology will be better if I relied on that than do it in myself. But the most important thing, because there's so much fear in this aspect, is be the human in the loop, identify if you're going to collaborate, as we did with the process architecture. I did collaborate with the models in developing a process architecture, but I do use my knowledge to vet the outputs that I got. And then I go and work with the team to make sure that that's a representation on how we do work in an organization. So important, keep the human in the loop, be the human rep. So we as process practitioners are in a good position to help the executive identify that AI strategy. Engage early. People know best, as I mentioned. So the same applies in here. We are in a good position as business architects to identify those potential initiatives that we can use the technology and help the executive and the organization develop that. And in this case, leverage what the technology is available. So play with that and understand what are your prompts, how to use it, and just get the knowledge that you need in order to use it. So thank you for the presentation. These are for allowing me to share my knowledge. If I want to just give you the last 4 tips, I will summarize it in 4 tips that I have for you. Process excellence really drive business excellence. So for those of you that are in your Baldrige journey, it's an and. The criteria is not prescriptive, and business architecture and process business management will offer that in terms of how to actually do that. The purpose of the process is really performance. So in BPM, I always said that the M in BPM is for management. Actively managing those processes is how you actually deliver value to the clients. Engage your people from the beginning, know where they are. Could be a process change, could be technology, but it's really actually immensely important to engage the people from the beginning. In terms of AI technologies, I understand that because I have gone through the same journey, that there's a lot of fear into that. The best way to lower that fear is really engage with the technology, play with the technology, and then different ways to actually do it. With that, the last thing that I want to mention to you is that a lot of the work that I do with business process management comes from my business partners, Roger Triguier. There's in their website, there's a couple of some information some of the techniques more in depth. Information about those tools are a couple of free downloads that you can actually download and learn a little bit more about business process management, and in any way that I can help, I'll be happy to.
Lourdes, thank you for such an outstanding presentation today. My goodness, there's so much great information in there. I think we could have had like broken it up and had 5 more in-depth webinars on each of those topics. That was just really great. We got a bunch of questions from the audience, so I'll jump right in here. The first one is, in the context of the Baldrige criteria, How do you ensure that the business architecture and BPM methodologies contribute to the strategic objectives of the organization?
Great question. So I would say go back to our organizational profile. So if we think about from that, we understand what is the mission of an organization, or we, of course, that's from talking about from the Baldrige examiner perspective. That is a summary that we have, but in real life, that knowledge resides in the organization. So understanding what is the mission, what are the strategic objective, and of course, there's a process for delivering and developing those strategic objectives as well, starting from what that for me define what are the key things that the organization needs to do in order to deliver value to the customers. Then use the techniques and approaches of business architecture to actually develop those. That is the starting from the top down. That will inform what processes do you actually need to deliver that value, and then work on those processes, and of course select the processes that they're the high impact processes because they're very linked and aligned with the strategy of the organization.
Thank you. Our second question is, what additional advice do you have to prepare our workforce for changes related to AI technologies?
Fabulous question because I went through the same journey. So I will say that in the technologies are here to stay. So we're not going back in terms of that. Just by doing the exercise of, and you can do it like finance or HR or business process practitioners or any role that you have in the organization, just by having a team meeting and discuss what are remember the three buckets that I defined, what are the things that humans are not going to be able to pass on? What are the things that actually the technology and the models are good enough that I can actually collaborate? And what are those repetitive tasks that we do day in and day out? For example, last week I was in a board meeting. The doctors identified that taking the notes on the meetings with the patients, it is very repetitive. They are implementing, there's a technology that actually can help the doctors doing that. And by doing and testing it with different doctors, first adopters, they're deploying that in the entire system. So identify what are those initiatives that you can work with the teams and continue expanding. Number two is really keep the human in the loop. You're always going to have the sense of what is correct and what is not correct. So it is very important that you keep the human developing and identifying opportunities. Go to Gemba, identify what is repetitive, and so on. The third thing that I will say is meet your people where the people are. Maybe the people just need knowledge about the technology. So develop a program in which you can educate your people in terms of the technology. Maybe your people is already a little bit more into that because especially the young workforce, they're already into that. Then just pass on and use their knowledge to identify what are the initiatives that you can create to expand and help the workforce.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is somewhat short here, but how do you prioritize process improvements?
Great question. So we don't have infinite resources, right? So it's very important that we actually identify what are those high impact processes. And by that, I mean, what are the processes actually moving the needle, that they're essential, that they're core processes, might be support processes that you actually need. And remember a couple slides back, I just was talking about identify what is the state of those processes and identify what is the impact that those processes have in your organization. And by doing that, and of course, there's much more in terms of developing that. We have a quantitative way to develop, identify what are those. Then you're going to come up with a series of processes, improvement projects that we need to develop by, ranking them from the top down and creating that improvement roadmap that you need. And of course, after that is really your normal processes for project management.
Okay. This next question is reflecting on the Baldrige criteria for continuous improvement. How do you apply lessons learned from BPM projects to drive ongoing organizational enhancement?
Fabulous question. So by identifying, and I just draw my knowledge in terms of my experience as process as Baldrige examiner, by applying concept of business process management and business architecture, I am implementing systematic ways to actually do the process design. The more we do that, imagining one organization is the absolute best process that you have, is a process of process design. That will mean that you will have a solid foundation to actually go and improve your processes. And the higher you are in your process excellence journey, the more business excellence journey is going to benefit out of that. When you do process improvement as a team, of course, as any improvement, you're going to continually improving your process of process improvement. And the lessons learned that you get there will continue improving your organization.
Here's a great Cat 3 question for you. We use customer journeys to understand what actions the customer takes and what are their requirements. How can we use that information to define our key core processes?
Actually, that's a question that I get quite a bit because a lot of the organizations, some organizations use that. So, as customer journeys are based on the point of view of the customer. So, what are the activities that a customer goes through to reach your organization? If you identify as you map out a process journey, you're going to identify what are the activities that a customer goes through. That is exterior. Going internal to your organization, then you're going to identify what are the processes that you actually need to have in order to deliver that experience to the client. So you're going to be constantly connecting the exterior, your customers, to the interior processes of your organization. And of course, as you go through the process journey, you should have a process tied in to actually deliver what the customer wants.
Okay, here's a category 7 question for you. You talked about process performance metrics. How do you select process metrics to ensure an effective management and improvement of your processes?
Fantastic question. Is at the core of business process management. So as I mentioned, first of all, you need to be mindful about what processes are you going to actively manage. So at the very tip of that pyramid that I was showing earlier, once you have selected the high impact processes, then typically I divide the process matrix if I need to in terms of those categories. I will make sure that I measure the effectiveness of the process, how linked are those the process is performing against what is important to organization, how effective I'm conducting the process, what is the quality of the output that I deliver, that I need to deliver from that process, and how I can measure how agile is the process, how quickly I can modify a process if I need to. So looking at those 4 categories of metrics, then of course, depending on the process is how you define the process metric.
Yeah, time for one more question here, even though we have a number of them, but this one is somewhat applying to just about the entire Baldrige criteria here and everything an organization does. And the question is, what are some of your best practices that you've used to document processes?
Fabulous question. There's a lot of exciting things going in that direction. So typically, it just really depends on the size of the organization, right? So if you, let's say that you have defined what are the important processes that you need to document, maybe for regulatory processes, maybe because you're going to do an improvement, or you simply need to document the processes. Depending on what, again, what are the tools that you have in organization, what is the size of organization, but at the very minimum, you have to, of course, properly name the process, starting with the verb, and then you have to describe what is the intent of the process and what is the process, how the process link to the other ones. We talk about the high level business architecture at the level 0. Of course, typically you have 1 or 2 levels underneath. What is the process? What are the linkages of that process? You're going to define the process metrics, and not only define the process metric, but you have to define how you're going to collect the data. So all that core knowledge you have to develop, and you can use different platforms, right? So if you have a modeling platform, you can use that if you, depending of what are the resources of your organization. But at the minimum, you have to have that information to inform and educate and be able to teach your workforce about the processes.
Very true, very true. Thank you so much, Lourdes. What an outstanding presentation today. We truly appreciate you taking the time to deliver this and to answer all those great questions. For all the questions we did not get to, we are going to forward those to Lourdes, and she will get back to you via email here sometime in the next few weeks. At this time, I'm going to close and change to the next slide. Just as a reminder to everybody out there, the Foundation's Institute for Performance Excellence has more than 400 training and professional certification courses offered online and at your own pace. This month, we are showcasing 2 courses in particular relevance to today's presentation. The first one is Artificial Intelligence for Marketing Professionals and Leadership for Women in Business. You can visit the Institute website at baldrigeinstitute.org/education to learn more and to register. As a reminder, a recorded version of today's presentation and the slides will be available on the Foundation's website early next week. And once again, thanks to all of our great sponsors and donors, we hope to see you again next month on August the 29th, where our guest presenter will be Paul Grizel, who will discuss From Compliance to Excellence, Engaging Senior Leaders in the Performance Excellence Journey. Thanks again for attending today's presentation, and have a great day.